So, wow, it's different on this side. I'm used to being over here, right? And it's different on this side. So I'll be talking to you a little bit about prayer, and particularly affirmative prayer, unity affirmative prayer. And I want you to know that even though prayer is a big part of my life now, that I absolutely love and live into prayer on a daily basis, and I'm honored and delighted. It's one of my, I would say, primary tools in my daily life is prayer. That was not always the case. I was not raised religious. My parents were hippies and traveled around, and we had our own kind of non-school and things like that. And, you know, my dad was an atheist. I was not exposed to religion much at all, except I had an aunt who lived with us on and off. Her name was Aunt Kate, and she said she'd pray for me, and that usually meant I was in big trouble. It usually meant that I had really pissed her off and that I was of the worst kind of heathen, actually. And all of us endured Aunt Kate's prayers on and off throughout the years that she lived with us. And even when she didn't live with us, she would send us cards saying, "I'll pray for you." When I came out, of course, she prayed for me. I have had many years of my Aunt Kate praying for me, and it really made me think that I didn't want to be anywhere near a prayer at all. That was not a good place to be. And in fact, it really wasn't until I entered 12-step in my mid-20s that I got an inkling that prayer could actually serve me, could actually be something that was helpful to me. The serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, was the first prayer that I actually felt like, oh, well, okay. I can go with that. That feels right to me. And of course, when you work the steps, if any of you have been involved in a 12-step program, when you work the steps, you get to step 11, which is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with a power greater than ourselves, praying for the knowledge of our higher power's will for us and the power to carry that out. And that made me actually, for the first time in my life, go seek out how to get to know a higher power. And I ended up in Unity in the mid-1980s in Santa Cruz, California. And I was so lucky because the woman who was the minister there, Emily Sanford, was amazing. She was an amazing minister. And she prayed like nothing I'd ever seen or heard before. Like she would literally, she would say, "Okay, let's pray," right? And the words she would say was like no other prayer I'd ever heard. It would be like, feel your body and notice how your stardust and starlight come into being. I mean, she would say stuff like that, and I'd be like, that's a prayer? Okay. And I didn't really ask too many questions about unity. At the time, I was young, I was working, I was doing life, all that stuff. I didn't really go into it. I just thought she was awesome because when she prayed, I actually felt good. It felt like a good thing when she was praying, and it really helped me get a sense of a higher power, and it helped me get a sense that prayer wasn't something that somebody might do to you if you were bad. So it was a really great thing. But it wasn't really until 2003, Joanne and I, our son was maybe 6 months, 7 months old, and she said, "I really want us to have a spiritual community." And there was a community forming at the time in Santa Cruz called Inner Light Ministries that she went and checked out first because I was like, I don't know about church. I just don't know about church. And she went and checked it out and said, "You got to come. It's great." And so we ended up being part of the spiritual community. And guess what? The Reverend there, Reverend Deborah Johnson, prayed just like Emily did. It was amazing. And I was like, wow, this is a thing. This is a thing. People pray like this. How cool is that? And I actually ended up taking classes there, and that's where I learned about prayer, and I eventually became a licensed practitioner through Inner Light Ministries with Reverend Deborah Johnson. And it really, I'm so grateful that I was able to learn this way of praying, this affirmative way of praying. It's been such a powerful part of my life. I will say that every faith uses prayer. I mean, just always. And all of the prayers are focused on the qualities of the divine and our relationship to it. That's pretty much what prayer is. It's a way to focus our attention on the qualities of the divine and how we're related to it. And that's true for affirmative prayer. And you know what? Sometimes it's even true for those prayers in the middle of the night, right? The prayers of like, God, help me, that prayer, right? Yeah, there's something in you, even when you say, God, help me. Or what my mother used to say, serenity now. She would do that when she was having a tantrum. She was a great serenity prayer. Very authentic, very real. It was her way of recognizing that something was possible in that moment. I will say, though, that there's a whole lot of myths and misconceptions about prayer. I don't know if anybody was like me. I was sort of really prayer averse. And part of why I was prayer averse is I'd heard a lot of weird stuff about prayer, like that there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and if you get it right, your prayers will be answered, and if you get it wrong, well, it could be even worse. It could be like blasphemy, like you could go to hell if you pray wrong. So it felt like, okay, and that you need to have the right words. And in my mom, I think she was Episcopalian, but she went to different kinds of churches, and they would have prayers they would memorize. So it was like, oh, like, what if I don't know what to say? Can I still pray? I certainly got that message that only certain people can pray, only ministers can pray, not regular people, or you have to have a talent for it, you know, if you do. And also that only people of certain faiths are allowed to pray, things like that. And these are just a few. I'm sure you can think of a whole bunch of other myths and misconceptions that you may have collected over the years about prayer. But this thing about you pray to God, it's a way to get what you want. And you pray to get God to pay attention and then give you what you want. Trish always quotes Eric Butterworth, and so of course I had to bring Eric Butterworth, right, into the conversation. In his book, Discover the Power Within, he says, we must work to alter the concept of God as the answer man, the super doctor, the divine warehouse, and the concept of prayer as a great spiritual slot machine. And that's part of why I didn't pray for a long time in my life. I'm like, you know, I'm not going to be asking something up in the sky to give me what I want. It's my job to create life. And sometimes I have stuff and sometimes I don't. I mean, it was just, that didn't make sense to me. But I love, there's a couple other folks I want to quote to you in here. One is Richard Rohr. Does anybody read Richard Rohr Daily Affirmation? I love Richard Rohr. He's a Franciscan friar, and he has this beautiful sort of daily meditations newsletter. He says, we pray not to change God, but to change ourselves. We pray to form a living relationship, not to get things done. Prayer is not a way to try to control God or even get what we want. Prayer is a symbiotic relationship with life and with God. It's a synergy which creates a result larger than the exchange itself. Now, it's a lot of words, but I love how Richard Rohr describes prayer and sort of busts us about this thing that, you know, we're trying to change God. My mentor, Reverend Deborah Johnson, who was my teacher at Inner Light Ministries, has a book called The Sacred Yes, Letters of the Infinite, and she has a whole chapter on prayer. She calls prayer as a movement in consciousness. And I love this definition of prayer. It says, prayer is a movement in consciousness. The purpose of prayer is to move your consciousness into alignment with God's divine plan and to surrender your will so that you are able to see and accept the goodness that is already at hand. And that's actually been my experience of prayer. That's my experience of prayer, is that it's a kind of a way of remembering and aligning myself and then getting out of the way and seeing what emerges. And I will say that prayer is a movement of consciousness. Who's moving? God's not moving, we're moving. We're the ones who move. It's our consciousness that moves. Of course, we have to talk about Myrtle Fillmore. She's a founder here of Unity, and she talks about our method of prayer here as acknowledging our oneness with God, claiming the ability that this gives us, and expecting to have things needed and conducive for spiritual progress. And this is affirmative prayer. And that's really the key feature of new thought, right? Of unity. There's a whole bunch of churches that we're all sort of in that family where we use affirmative prayer as our primary tool of prayer. And we speak often with affirmations. We use affirmations, and Trish has talked about affirmations here a lot, as well as denials. I loved her lecture on denials as well. But affirmations are basically a statement of truth that we use to anchor our mind. Just like we know that the sun is always shining behind a cloudy sky, we also can know the truth about wholeness and abundance and harmony, even while moving through illness, financial struggles, or different circumstances. So this way of using affirmative prayer to sort of pierce through the current appearances and tap into what we have studied in unity to be the truth of our being, which is we are one with the divine. And the divine is having its life all around us and in us every moment. Let's see. Yeah, I want to skip through some of that, but I do, of course, I want to say one thing that Eric Butterworth says here. He said, prayer, I love it, he's succinct here, prayer is the contemplation of the facts from the highest point of view. And I like that because it's not that we're denying what's happening. It's that we're sort of pulling up into a space where we're also remembering that there is that is active constantly, that is full intelligence, full grace, full mercy, always activating, always around us. And we want to be able to see our circumstances and conditions with that in mind and from that perspective. And he also says that answered prayer, it solves problems, that certainly happens, but it's the byproduct or the secondary effect that the most important purpose of prayer is lifting ourselves to a high level of consciousness where we can condition the mind. And conditioning the mind, this is the other way that we talk about prayer in this sort of new thought family, is as a spiritual mind treatment. And it sounds kind of technical, but for me, it's like the perfect thing because my mind goes off on all kinds of doomsday scenarios and tangents, and I need to have a little treatment for it. I need to treat it. I need to help my mind, remember that all is unfolding and that I can trust. Because boy, have I got a plan for y'all, right? And particularly when it comes to my family, my son, my wife, anybody who's in my sphere, I have a very controlling mind. I want to manage everything. It makes me feel safe the more I manage everyone, right? So my mind it's like a little horse to the barn. It just heads in that direction and there's no stopping it. And it really was like that. I felt like I lived at the mercy of my mind until I learned how to do spiritual mind treatment and affirmative prayer. I felt like my mind was just, there it was. And the problem is that when my mind goes into all that worry and doubt and fear, and I have so many fantasies of what somebody ought to be doing and should be doing right now and how I could actually tell them what to do if I was really nice about it and said it in just the right, I'll go on and on, right? It just whoosh, right? And then I have all these feelings of judgment. I start to feel sick. Sometimes my mind makes me feel sick because I'm just struggling. I'm suffering with all my fantasies of what I could do to make it better, and they won't listen to me. And, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I've spent plenty of my life there. So what I love about the term spiritual mind treatment is, for me, that's pretty much the real thing. That's what I'm doing. I am treating the mind that goes crazy. So Unity has a 5-step affirmative prayer flow. And let me just tell you this, when I first heard Unity prayers like Emily Samford, I had no idea there was like a 5-step thing. I just thought she was amazing and made stuff up, right? And it was all perfect, and she was just super talented. But actually there are 5 steps, right? Like, okay, I can figure that out. I can fit it on my hand. And so this was a revelation to me that actually, when Trish is praying up here or other people are praying, they're actually doing this process. And I actually like to think of this process almost like being a lawyer, like a spiritual lawyer to my mind that wants to rah, rah, rah. I have to almost argue with myself to release my worry, doubt, and fear and come into a better consciousness, or a consciousness of grounded, peaceful sense of possibility. So the process takes me there. The first is open, right? We can't solve the problem in the same consciousness that created it, right? So the first thing we got to do is realize something else needs to happen here, right? It's that moment of humility and that moment of, okay, let me just breathe. Let me just stop. Let me just breathe. Let me just open. That's the first step. The second step is recognizing that God is, and here is where I love my little lawyer self. I start to then detail and basically recite out loud what I think I know God is. And we all can't know God, right? I mean, God's sort of more than any of our thoughts, but I will use all the little things that I have recognized over the years is God. And that helps me, even if I start naming powers greater than myself, like gravity. If I start naming that there is gravity, that I'm held to my seat, if I start naming that the moon and the stars are in perfect order, that there is a rotation of planets going on that has nothing to do with me but is fabulous and is serving me and serving our planet and serving our life, that there is air that we're breathing, and it's so perfectly timed that I breathe out what plants breathe in. I start to remind myself what my sense of God is. And you all can do that for whatever your understanding of God is. It really doesn't matter what your understanding is. And it's so worth it to journal a little bit and get clear on what is your understanding of God and what are the few things that you can say to yourself that tend to get you to go, there's something else in charge here. There's something going on here that's bigger than me, right? So that's the second step there, is taking yourself into that territory. What I love, Reverend Deborah used to say, you start telling your problems about your big God, right? Instead of just your God about your big problems, you sort of just start talking about the universe in this way that makes you feel like, okay, we're good here. And Eric Butterworth will say, we began this recognition not to attempt to get God's attention again, but to direct our own attention to that which neither slumbers nor sleeps, that is constantly alive and activating as divine grace, mercy, and intelligence, or whatever you want to name it. That's the second step. The third step is this unify human and divine. And that's where basically, it's kind of it's an awkward word to say it, but basically it's where I go, okay, if God is everywhere present and infinite, then I must be having my life in God, because there can't be anything outside of the infinite, so I must be in the infinite. So here I am in God, life is happening in me. I'm breathing in the breath of God. There's God, intelligence in every cell of my being. My organs and functions are working. I am a place and a space where God is right now. So it's another part of the argument, right? My lawyer argument to my mind. And then finally, that realized stage is when we turn our attention back to the circumstance and condition, whatever that was that we were looking at initially, which led us to pray, right? Whatever wasn't working, like me wanting to control my son's every move right now. He's 21. He really doesn't need me to manage his life. But he lives in my house, and I can't help it. I watch, right? I'm seeing what's going on. And boy, have I got a plan for him. So once I have done this in my mind, where I'm remembering that God is everywhere present and I am one with God, I can turn my attention back on my son and go, God is one with my son. God is activating right now in every circumstance and condition that he is experiencing. The God life in him is being activated. It helps me recognize, right? And realize that something else could be happening here. And this is really sort of the meat of the prayer. This is the place where we realize that because there is the divine, that I am one with the divine, that changes my circumstance and conditions. That puts in the possible inside the impossible circumstance. Suddenly, something is possible here. Something can be activated. And in Unity, we talk about how we activate the divine through our attention and our word. So this is that step in prayer where we say, okay, I'm going to activate these qualities of being, love, intelligence, grace. I'm going to activate divine right provision. I'm going to activate perfect employment. I'm going to activate all the right connections. I'm going to activate love, right? With my attention and my word. And that's the fourth step. And then I got to tell you, once I start talking like that, once I'm starting to pray like that, I can't help it. The party starts, right? There's just this feeling that comes up in me like, oh, and it's happening now. It's happening now. I can start celebrating now. Like right now, I'm activating it in consciousness. It's being activated now. And we know in unity that when we activate it in consciousness, so it shows up in manifestation. That's an element of the law. So we can just start celebrating and relaxing, that we don't have to worry about what's showing up right in this moment. We don't have to worry that we don't actually see the appearance happening. I don't see the job yet, right? I'm not seeing it, but I know it's being activated right now from wherever it is. The connection is on its way, and it's going to happen in perfect order and perfect timing. So guess what? I can go from being worried and upset and all judgy into celebration and gratitude. Thank God. I'm so grateful. All needs met, right? He is thriving in the world, right? So I can move into that direction. So that's really just that's the process right there. That's the 5-step process. And I would just say one more thing to all of that as I close here. It really, okay, so there's the unity 5-step prayer way to pray, but the most important way to pray is your way to pray. That's really it. I mean, I don't always pray 5-step affirmative prayer. I don't. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'm back to the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, right? I'm right back to some of those early prayers I learned. You know, it's just the only thing that really matters is, does that activity that you're doing uplift and move you into alignment with the truth that you are a beloved child of God, that you're one with the divine life, and that all things are working together for your good and for the good of all concerned. That's a good prayer. That's all you need. That's how you tell if it works. Does it move you into a better space? You got a great prayer right there. And I'll close with that. I want to go into meditation. We'll do it very brief because I'm looking at the time going, wow, it flies. So Bettman and Halpin will come up and we'll do just a very brief centering time so you can take all that in.
When I pray, I feel my heart go deeper, my heart go deeper into my God. When I pray, I feel my heart go deeper, my heart go deeper into my God. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray.
Yeah. Let's do that right here, right now, as you're breathing in. So just imagine that you're opening. You're doing the first step right now. You're just opening. You're just breathing. You're allowing your mind to open. And you're just breathing with that for a minute. And I'll just sort of lead you through the steps, and you can do the words in your own mind while we're meditating here. So you're opening. And now start bringing into your mind anything that for you is meaningful and recognizes that the divine is. any statement that for you tells you that there is something that is having its way in beauty and intelligence and grace and mercy. So just take a moment to breathe and feel into that step, recognizing God is. Yeah. And then, if you will, start moving your attention to how you are connected with that you have just named is. So just draw your attention to how you are part of it. You are a place and a space where it has its way, it breathes, it lives, it moves. It has its being in you. And then in that space of unifying with the divine, feel free to realize the truth of your circumstance and condition right now as a place where God is activating right now. That you have the power to call forth the spiritual qualities that would assist. And so just take a moment to feel into your own realization. That's great. And as you feel into that realization, you can just start beginning to feel grateful. Maybe there are things you feel grateful for that you can draw to mind, or maybe the prayer itself feels grateful. Maybe you're grateful for just a moment to breathe. Go ahead and lift your heart into a sense of thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. How good it is. How good it is to be here in this space and time, right here, right now, in this beloved spiritual community. And from that sense of gratitude, we can come back into this sense of the song and praying.
I feel my love go deeper, my love go deeper into my heart. When I pray, I feel my love go deeper, my love go deeper into my heart. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. When I pray, I feel my heart go deeper, my heart go deeper into my heart.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much.